Introduction. Church Going by Philip Larkin is a poem that really makes you think about the role of religion in today's world. Larkin, who's known for being one of the great British poets of the 20th century, uses this poem to explore what churches mean in a society that's becoming less religious. It's written in a down-to-earth way where the speaker just seems like a regular person. But through his thoughts, Larkin digs into how important or not important churches might still be. Summary of the poem. The poem kicks off with this guy, who seems pretty ordinary, walking into an empty church. He's not particularly respectful or reverent. He's almost casual about it, as if the church doesn't mean much to him. But for some reason, he's curious enough to look around. He does the typical stuff you might do in a church, takes off his hat, wanders around, checks out the lectern, and even leaves a donation, though it feels like he's just going through the motions. Even though he starts off seeming indifferent, he begins to think about what churches are for, especially in a world where fewer people seem to be religious. He wonders if they'll just become ruins, or if they'll still serve some kind of purpose, even if they're not used for worship anymore. Eventually, he admits that churches do mean something to him, even if he can't fully explain it. Maybe it's because they represent tradition, or maybe it's the way they connect us to something bigger than ourselves. By the end, he figures that even if religion fades, churches will still matter because they fulfill a deep human need. 1. The setting and tone. The poem starts with the speaker casually stepping into a church. His tone isn't exactly respectful. It's more like he's just checking out another building. Nothing special. He even describes what he sees in a sort of dismissive way, using phrases like brass and stuff, which shows he's not deeply connected to the religious symbols around him. This sets the stage for us to see the church through the eyes of someone who's not religious, but is still drawn to the place for some reason. 2. The speaker's actions. Once inside, the speaker does a bunch of things that a typical visitor might do, takes off his cycle clips, walks around, reads a bit, and leaves some money. But it's clear he's not doing these things out of faith. It's more out of habit or because he feels like he should. This shows the tension between the sacred and the secular in his life. Even though he's not a believer, he still feels this weird pull to go through the motions, which says something about how, even in a secular age, rituals and traditions still hold some power. 3. The reflection. After he leaves, the speaker starts thinking about what churches will become in the future. As fewer people believe, what will happen to these buildings? Will they just turn into old historical sites, or could they still serve some other purpose? He realizes that even if churches aren't used for worship, they'll still be important because they connect us to our past and to something deeper in life. He also considers that churches might become places where people go to think about big life questions, things like death, existence, and what life really means, even if they're not religious anymore. It's like he's grappling with the idea that even as religion fades, the need for places like churches might still be there. 4. The conclusion. By the end of the poem, the speaker decides that churches will always have a place in the world, even if people stop being religious. They'll continue to remind us of our mortality and the mysteries of life. He sees that these buildings hold something profound, something that goes beyond just religious belief. He finishes by thinking that people like him, who aren't particularly religious, will still visit churches because they satisfy a deep need for reflection, tradition, and a connection to something greater. Themes explored in the poem. 1. Religion versus secularism. Larkin looks at how religion and secularism interact in modern society. The speaker might not be religious, but he's still drawn to the church, showing that religion still has some influence, even on non-believers. 2. The role of churches. The poem questions what will happen to churches as society becomes less religious. Larkin suggests that while their religious role might diminish, churches will still be important as places of reflection and connection to our past. 3. Human need for ritual and tradition. The speaker's actions in the church show that even without belief, there's still a human need for ritual and tradition. Larkin suggests that these aspects of religion will stick around, even if faith itself doesn't. 4. Mortality and the Meaning of Life. The speaker thinks about how churches help us deal with mortality and the big questions in life. Larkin suggests that this will keep